point, I began to seriously doubt my audiologist. And I could no longer sleep well, and I was suffering from anxiety and depression. So I went to my primary care physician again, who prescribed me sleeping pills called trazodone. And although it did make me fall asleep, the medication made me feel mentally foggy and not myself. I hated taking them, and I was afraid I would get addicted. And it was at this point where I hit an all-time low. At 20 years old, I really felt like my life was over. I could no longer hang out with friends and go out to eat and go to a movie theater and even some more far-fetched things like have children one day because they would be too noisy. And I had very little motivation to get out of bed every morning because based on all the information I found online, I couldn't even find one success story. And my doctors could not say with great certainty that I would ever get better, at least the ones that knew what the condition was. And anytime I would hear something even slightly loud, my ears would just shoot with pain. And I would get this weird sensation called oral fullness, where my ears would feel so full after sound exposure that they would seem like they could just pop. It's a similar sensation to when you're descending from an airplane and you have that pressure. I would basically get that pressure after being exposed to sound, even if it wasn't that loud, for a couple hours, few hours at a time after. So life was a living hell, and if it wasn't for my loved ones pushing me to stay busy and providing the emotional support I needed, I don't know how long I could have gone on. And it wasn't really until I had my first cognitive behavioral therapy appointment that things started to change. I'm so grateful that my psychologist was very well researched when it came to hyperacusis and tinnitus. She explained the importance to sticking to the three instructions my audiologist gave me, and she said that she had patients in the past who didn't stick to the three instructions and ended up worsening their hyperacusis. So she explained that one thing I need to work on was to learn to relax my body and lower my anxiety towards sound. And a very widespread problem, she said, that occurs with hyperacusis patients is that they feel the need to be hypervigilant and tense up and be on edge when they're around sound, even though the sound isn't loud enough to cause hearing damage. So I could definitely relate to this hypervigilant behavior because I even got into the habit of bracing myself for pain when I was about to be exposed to a sudden loud sound, such as someone about to shut a door, or a waiter picking up plates and stacking them, or even turning on the shower. And it's kind of funny, I used to flush the toilet and then run out of the bathroom as fast as I could to avoid the noise because it hurt my ears so much. She said that it was important to relax my body during these abrupt noises, and when I'm about to hear a moderately loud sound, like a door shut, I should take a deep breath out and relax my body. She said that this hypervigilance leads to my body having a fight or flight response, which only causes unnecessary anxiety towards sound, and this behavior could really take over my life if I didn't kind of cut this bad habit. And there's a thing called phonophobia, which a lot of hyperacusis patients develop, which is basically fear of sound. So although I found that this tip was very counterintuitive, it involved me allowing to have, or me kind of giving up my fear for normal sounds, it did make sense, even though I would have to grin and bear some of the pain. Um, The second tip was to list all the things I stopped doing to my hyperacusis, such as going out to eat at restaurants, hanging out with friends, going to gym, and even just listening to music. I think I stopped listening to music for a good 2 or 3 months before finally getting to a psychologist who's telling me to get back into these things. So, and I just took, being able to listen to music for granted. And I didn't realize how much it was important to me until I couldn't listen to anymore because even it just seemed like it would hurt my ears. So she explained that I needed to modify my lifestyle in order to find ways to go back to what I was doing or what I was used to doing before, such as instead of going to louder restaurants at busier times, going to quieter restaurants, and just explaining and educating my friends about the condition I had, and finding ways to work out at home or in quieter areas of the gym. And as well, and also by going back to listening to music at low volumes, and just things like turning down the volume on my phone so it wouldn't startle me when I got a text message. So basically, her approach was for me to focus on the things I can do and find ways around the things I could no longer do to kind of battle my depression. Um, and the last tip was to stop spending all my time on the internet researching and browsing through the forums and support groups. She explained to me that although it's important to educate myself about the condition, I can get the education I need through reputable websites, and medical professionals such as my audiologist, neuro-otologist, and herself. I then explained that I've been stressed out. Hold on one second. I then explained that I've been stressed out because I met a lot of people on the forums and Facebook groups that have suffered with this condition a lot longer than I have. They tell me that this condition is permanent and there is no cure. So she began to explain to me how the internet does not really accurately represent everyone with this condition as a whole. So only those who never recover find their way to the internet and post about their condition, whereas ones who do recover wouldn't post about or go online and post about their success story because they would never find themselves researching to begin with. She also said that there are many barriers to recovery, such as overprotection, like using earplugs in normal sound environments, as well as fear of reaching out to an audiologist, and also many not having the resources for them to get help, as well as the fact that hyperacusis can be closely linked and fueled by anxiety. So there are many people who cannot conquer their fear of sound psychologically, and overall I was just so glad she explained this to me because I never thought of how strongly the population of the internet and people on these forums and support groups could deviate from the actual representation of people who have hyperacusis or people who had hyperacusis and recovered from. So I remember walking out of that appointment with my therapist, or psychologist rather, feeling the most positive I have ever felt since the onset of my hyperacusis. And I strictly followed the instructions from both my audiologist and psychologist. And after a couple weeks, I noticed that I could handle more sound with less pain. It could have just been the passage of time, but I truly do believe that the principles that my psychologist explained to me really helped me calm my nerves and reduce my irrational fear of sound. I braced my body less for abrupt sounds, much less, which ended up lowering my anxiety. And now that I knew that just because I would feel discomfort, normal sounds do not cause further hearing damage. So I ended up modifying my lifestyle by asking to be seated in quieter areas of restaurants, lowering the volume on my phone so the ring wouldn't startle or hurt my ears, telling my friends about the condition so they could accommodate and provide support. And if things get loud, my friends would know to lower the volume or could completely understand if I needed to step out for a bit. So I am really lucky to have friends that were very understanding. As far as going to the gym, I started going back to the gym and avoided the loud areas where there was a lot of weightlifters that would kind of slam their weights. And I started exercising outdoors as well. Just getting back to exercising 3 or 4 times a week lowered my stress, improved my sleep, and fought depression. Some studies even show that exercise helps circulation to the ear, which is beneficial for my hearing health. And I knew I had to quit my addiction of researching hyperacusis online. So I told my family and friends to hold me accountable if they saw me researching. And after a while, I completely stopped reading forums and support groups online. And I couldn't believe how much negativity that eliminated from my mindset. It was after that first successful month that I started to believe I could get better and will recover completely. So after 2 months of slight improvement, my audiologist called me in for an appointment because she received the TRT device for me to use. And the device was called a Sound Cure Serenade. She fitted me and personalized the tone specifically based on my tinnitus frequency. Um, and I was supposed to use the device for a specific amount of time each day, and when I felt as well as when I felt my ears were being bothered by sound. And after a couple months of using the TRT sound generators, each week I would bring up the volume little by little, almost similar to like weightlifting. And the idea behind the sound generator was to strengthen or retrain my ears to be able to handle more and more sound. And the TRT method was developed by a Polish researcher named Paul, I think it's called Jastreboff, and and it has to do with a lot of brain plasticity, and it was originally designed to treat tinnitus, but it can be used as an effective treatment for hyperacusis as well. And although it takes a long time and it's almost impossible to notice the improvement day by day, I did continue to improve with the use of TRT treatment. And it was not something that you could notice, like, say, day by day, but it was something that I would notice through a couple weeks. I would notice that I could handle a little bit more sound. But months went by, and I continued strictly abiding to the advice I received both from my audiologist and psychologist, as well as continued the use of my TRT devices, and I slowly but surely improved my sound tolerance and returned to my life before my trip to New York City. I even began to notice that I could be exposed for sounds for longer periods of time before my ears would feel full, and I'd get that feeling of sensory overload. But don't get me wrong, it was not an easy or straightforward, even with the tips I received. Multiple times a week I would encounter an unexpected loud sound that I could not be avoided, such as someone slamming a door, or a car with a loud exhaust driving by me, or someone dropping a plate. And each time this happened, I would get extremely anxious, and I was afraid that the loud noise could cause a setback that would eliminate all the recovery I achieved thus far. So months went by, and just like that, I would get improvement, and I would be exposed to a loud sound that would result in a setback that would last a few days, and then I would improve further. And it was a constant battle of like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And however, I noticed that the more time passed and the more I recovered, the more my ears would grow stronger and be more resilient to setbacks. And over the course of probably 100 mini setbacks, I always recovered past the setback and even improved further. So each and every month I would get better, and the improvement was so slight that it'd only be noticeable after a couple weeks, like I said before. But slowly but steadily I regained my life back from this horrendous condition. And after 3 or 4 months of tinnitus retraining therapy, or TRT, I felt that my sound tolerance was back to normal for the most part. So I returned my TRT devices back to my audiologist. She asked me how to rate how much my sound sensitivity affected my quality of life from 1 to 100 again, like I did when I saw her originally. And I said when I first scheduled my appointment, I rated it 100, but now that after abiding to the advice given to me by both her and my psychologist, I would say that it only affects me 20 out of 100. She said I made a marvelous recovery and should continue to do so as time passes. So at this point, around 8 months had passed since my initial trip to New York City, and I felt pretty much recovered for the most part, aside from some discomfort I would get from loud environments, such as a party full of people, or a bar playing music loudly, or loud action scenes of a movie in a movie theater. So months passed, and months passed with even without the use of TRT devices, and I continued to slowly improve my sound intolerance. And that leads me to today, in which 10.5 months have passed since my initial trip to New York City, and I truly feel that I made a full recovery. I can do everything I used to without pain and discomfort, other than going to something like a loud club or concert, and something that wouldn't even be advisable to go to without hearing protection to begin with. But just to give you an idea, I can now go to bars and busy restaurants and ride airplanes without any discomfort or pain. And I really feel so blessed and lucky that I made a full recovery from such a debilitating condition. And as far as my tinnitus goes, I still have my tinnitus, but I fully habituated to it and no longer bothers me or causes me distress. Basically, I only hear it when I I go to bed, or I'm in like a silent room. It really just, I don't know, it just, I'm completely habituated to it, just like someone would be of the sound of a refrigerator running, or an air vent, an AC going on. You just kind of habituate it, and it doesn't bother you anymore. So luckily I fully habituated the tinnitus as well. So it was such a long road, and it was full of setbacks, and it really was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I really do believe I recovered not due to the tinnitus retraining therapy alone, but through the multifaceted treatment plan provided by my neuro-otologist, audiologist, and rehab psychologist, as well as strictly abiding to the 3 tips my audiologist gave me: not to overprotect by using hearing protection in normal hearing environments, using sound enrichment through the TRT treatment, and listening to white noise when I'm in silent environments, and sleeping, as well as knowing that normal sounds under 85 decibels cannot and will not cause further damage to my hearing health, and as well as the 3 tips given to me by my psychologist, such as stop being hypervigilant, and learn to relax my body instead of bracing myself for sounds like a door shutting, modifying my lifestyle in order to find ways to get back to what I did in the past. And when I say modify my lifestyle, I mean besides the use of hearing protection in normal sound environments. So finding workarounds that don't consist of using earplugs. And the third thing was, of course, quit researching and reading forums, which led to it consuming all my thoughts. And if you yourself have hyperacusis, like I said in the beginning of this video, I highly recommend you locate a neuro-otologist, or just, if you can't find a neuro-otologist, find an ear specialist, not an ear, nose, and throat doctor, because they're mostly surgeons and not really trained in neurological issues that affect the ear as well. So, and also, and the reason why I recommend you see a neuro-otologist or ear specialist is that the doctor will be able to run a series of comprehensive tests to rule out any serious medical problems, such as an acoustic neuroma or saccular dislocation, which could be the cause of it. And I'd also recommend finding an audiologist that is familiar with tinnitus retraining therapy, who can work alongside a rehab psychologist who is well versed in in-ear conditions like tinnitus and hyperacusis. I would have saved a lot of time, money, and stress if I knew this advice beforehand. Hyperacusis was by far the hardest thing I ever had to go through, and even though I no longer suffer from the condition, it taught me a lot about life. It taught me never to take my health for granted, the importance of hearing protection in excessively loud sound environments such as concerts and nightclubs, as well as mind over matter. And if you work hard and stick diligently to a plan, and believe you will recover despite the odds. You can and will do so. Because the road to recovery was such a long and grueling process, and that there were so many barriers to recovery, such as unable to be seen by the right medical professionals, not being well educated of all the tips since it's such a rare condition, being misguided through non-credible sources on the internet, and lastly having trouble sticking to the tips given to me by medical professionals. I truly believe that this is why there are so many chronic hyperacusis sufferers out there. But like I said, however, I can only speak for myself and my own personal journey. Um, if I didn't get the great treatment under the medical professionals who specialize in my condition, and I didn't stick to all the instructions they gave me and have a positive outlook and truly believe I could and will get better, I honestly think I would still be suffering to this day. And I'd like to reiterate the fact that it was a combination of different levels of treatment that helped me make a full recovery. And unfortunately, as of now, there isn't a magic pill that you can take right now at this moment to kind of cure the sensitivity to sound, and same goes for tinnitus. But I think since I survived and made a recovery, I don't want anyone to have to feel isolated and hopeless like I did when I first discovered the condition. And I was first researching and trying to get more information. I feel like if it's my duty to share my journey with others on the internet, because even if only one person finds this video helpful, I'll feel accomplished, and this video will be worth it because I want you to know that you're not alone. And even though you may have hyperacusis, you certainly do not have to live with it, and it's not always a chronic condition. Again, I'm not a medical professional, and what has worked for me may not work for you, and everyone recovers at different paces, so take what you will, but I really do have faith in the treatment I received and its efficacy in providing me with a full recovery. I also recommend you check out hyperacusisresearch.org and follow or like their Facebook page. The organization is led by a researcher named Brian Pollard, and the organization is focused on finding a cure to stop noise-induced pain from hyperacusis. They even have a YouTube channel where they hosted a webinar with Dr. Salvi of the University of Buffalo, who has done intensive research on the topic of hyperacusis and tinnitus. It's something I definitely recommend you watching if you're interested in the most up-to-date research and what's going on as of now. The organization just created a roadmap for a cure, so it's very exciting that the progress is being made, even if it's in the early stages. Their biggest barrier right now is lack of money to fund the research to find a cure, so I highly recommend you support the organization through donation. And I'm not affiliated or endorsed with the organization, but I have faith in their mission. So I myself have donated to both Hyperacusis Research and the American Tinnitus Association, whose goal is to find a cure for tinnitus. And with as much attention hearing health has received recently, due to the widespread use of MP3 players, I truly believe a cure will be found in my lifetime. There are so many drug therapies that are coming down the pipeline in the clinical trial stage, particularly from the biotech companies Auris Medical and Autonomy Therapeutics, which you can look up. Along with great advancements in technology, there is more research being done on hearing health today, more than ever. So this is really promising, and I think that's all I have for this video. I didn't want to leave anything out and really wanted to be as detailed as possible. So I'll post any helpful links in the video description box below, and I'll do my best to respond to comments, so feel free to ask any questions. But yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I really hope you find it helpful and wish you the best of luck.